Thank you for joining us today on the webinar. So today we're going to speak about India's missing working women, tracing the journey of women's economic contribution over the last 7 decades. And this will be presented by myself and Vidhi. So over the past 3, 4 years, we've been hearing how India has been touted as an emerging economy globally. So when we got a chance to contribute to this book that chronicled women's journey, we decided, like our team of researchers, decided to take a look at women's economic contribution. So we looked at the government sourced data through the National Sample Survey Organization, which has been published by the Ministry of Statistics, the Government of India. So we looked at the employment, unemployment surveys, as well as the periodic labor force surveys. And we checked for how women have actually participated in the Indian economy. So what we found was that despite continued economic growth, the female labor force participation rate in India has been amongst the lowest across global economies and is surpassed only by a few Arabic nations. Like the FLFPR in India is definitely the lowest amongst BRICS countries. So the impact of this phenomenon is that India might actually be losing out on a lot of economic gains. So a report by the OECD suggested that India could add about $770 billion to its GDP by 2025. That's in like 5 years. If 68 million more women became part of the formal workforce. So there was this kind of conundrum that that we were faced with in 2017. India was touted as the fastest growing economy in the world. It was also the year where we completed 70 years of independence, but it was also the year where we saw the lowest participation of women in the formal economic sphere in India. So, why was a country that has been seeing such high economic growth, such gains in female education, as well as a decrease in fertility rates, why is it seeing very little women in its economic sphere? So when we delved further into the study, we realized that along with the economic growth, there was also a growth in women's aspirations. 70% of women believed themselves to be highly or extremely career oriented. But in reality, only 20% of the women that were surveyed remained employed a year after their vocational training. Even in the social sphere, 73% of girls stated they would prefer to marry after 21 years of age. But in reality, over 60% of the women were married before the age of 20. So, where was this gap between the aspirations and reality stemming from? So, Indian women, when they enter the labor force, face a lot of restrictions owing mainly to deeply entrenched patriarchal norms. When we studied this in detail, we found that the workforce is not a gender neutral sphere where only one's merit is enough to get oneself a job. There has been uh, there are like various hurdles, starting from getting access to education, access to skill training, and even when they enter the workforce, there are a lot of social norms that sort of restrict the kind of job that women can do, how far their workplace can be from their place of residence. Another important aspect is the amount of time women spend on domestic work. So, according to an OECD study, even today, women in India spend up to 352 minutes, that's almost 6 hours per day on domestic work, which is 577% more than men who spend less than an hour. So, there is a disproportionate burden of household chores on women, which reduces the time that they can actually set aside for economic activity. The other factor is that marriage and childbearing are considered to be an important part of a woman's life, generally, even in India today. So, this also hampers their ability to participate in the economy. So we're going to now go through our key findings that we gleaned when we looked at all the data through the NSSO surveys. We'll first look at female labor force participation rate. FLFPR basically, okay, labor force participation rate basically refers to the proportion of people who are either looking for a job or already have a job. So FLFPR, that's the female labor force participation rate, was 24% in 1955, and it was fairly consistent and fell to its lowest level to 18% in 2017. The highest it was at 33%, which was in the 1970s. Again, the difference between the male and the female rates have been averaged 40 percentage points throughout the last 7 decades, and they've never been bridged. Next, we're going to look at the workforce participation rate, and this is only for the working age population, which is 15 years and above. Now, WPR essentially refers to the proportion of men or women who are actually employed in any sort of a job. Now, if you look at the two graphs, there was a vast difference in the WPR rates for urban women and rural women, and in the 1980s. But now in 2017, that gap has been pretty much bridged. In urban areas, the rates have been fairly low and fairly consistent. From 25%, it fell to 18% over the last 5 decades. Again, if you look at the male-female differences, this gap has been an average of 50 percentage points in urban areas, and again, hasn't been bridged over the last 5 decades. Rural areas, however, there was a drastic fall in the number of employed women. From 53% in 1987, it almost halved to 24%. And there was a major fall after 2004. So relatively and in absolute terms, a lot of female employees in rural areas ceased to be employed, or they left the labor force over the last 5 decades. So a large, like a considerable proportion of the reduction in the workforce is explained by rural women moving out of the labor force. The next thing that we looked at was the unemployment rate. In urban areas, for females, the unemployment rate has always been higher than their male counterparts, and it was like the second highest over the last 5 decades. In 2017, it was at 11%. Unlike in rural areas where the unemployment rate has been fairly similar to the male unemployment rate, and one of the implications or one of the interpretation of this for us was that in urban areas, there were a lot of women entering the labor force and looking for work, but there's a possibility that they did not get a job that was commensurate to their requirements or their skills. The next thing that we looked at was the type of jobs that the men and women in India are employed in. In rural areas, a very high proportion of women still denote themselves as self-employed. This was 62% in 1983, and it hasn't reduced. It has actually just reduced marginally to 58% in 2017. There is also a high incidence of women employed as casual labor, again in rural India. This was 35% in 1983 and again has reduced only marginally to 32%. While the proportion of females in salaried jobs has actually gone up from 3% to 11% over the last 5 decades. But again, it's a very small number. The same distribution for males has been fairly consistent over the last 5 decades. But the point of note here is that more than 50% of the females who denote themselves as self-employed were actually employed as helpers in household enterprises rather than actually being entrepreneurs or actually running businesses. They were actually just employed in household enterprises. So in rural India, that would essentially mean that they participated on the household farms. So it could be interpreted that a lot of women were employed in agriculture, which is a very low productivity sector, and thus is not realized, like it doesn't help them realize their economic potential, as well as does not pay them as much as a formal employment in any other sector would. This trend has been fairly different in urban areas. Uh, the proportion of salaried employees amongst females in urban areas actually doubled from 1983 to 2017. So in recent years, 52% of the women in urban areas have had some kind of salaried employment, which sort of gives them a regular wage as well as some social security benefits. This has also been coupled with a drastic fall in casual labor amongst urban women. So this number halved from 28% in 1983 to 13% in 2017. Again, for urban males, this distribution among self-employed, salaried, and casual labor has been fairly consistent. So the good news is that there has been there's a vast increase in the proportion of women who hold salaried positions, especially in urban areas. The next thing that we looked at was the growth of wages. So we looked at four categories: uh, urban workers under casual and regular work. Now, under casual urban workers, the wage gap uh, improved only marginally from 57% to 59%. So, in terms of wage gap, what we mean is that under for any urban worker employed as a casual worker, the female is paid only 59% of what the male is paid. In casual rural, amongst casual rural workers, this wage gap was a little better at 65%. Amongst regular rural workers, there was a much higher improvement from 59% to 66%. And the lowest wage gap is seen amongst regular urban workers, which has been consistent at 80%. So what this means is that the wage gaps have been very sticky over the last 3 decades, and we are nowhere close to having a zero wage gap. Now, my co-presenter Vidhi will take you through some peculiar trends that we also came across when we undertook this study. Vidhi, over to you.
So wait, Vinny, before you get into these trends, and before we get into this more deeply, I just want to
Yeah.
take a minute for us to digest some of these statistics. I'm sure there are many of you in this webinar today who are probably seeing these statistics for the first time and saying, "Are you kidding me?" So I just want to take reactions from some people in the team and from the participants on how they feel. So anyone who wants to express any of their questions or anything on the statistics, maybe Salona, I'd love to hear from you. Salona is a good friend of mine who's joined this webinar, and she's actually with HSBC, and she's been texting me as we've been presenting. So Salona would love to hear your thoughts, with the rest of the team, and your reactions to these statistics. If you can hear me.
Thanks. Yeah, I can hear you, Mitali. Thanks for that. So some of these statistics that I was just telling you are simply eye-opening, just because a lot of us have been lucky enough to be in among the urban employed female workforce ourselves. We never really realize what a small minority we are. The sort of gap in percentage of employment, and of course the wage difference is just mind-boggling. So it's good to see the big picture and actually realize that we feel we've come a long way, but it's just the tip of the iceberg, and we've got a lot more to do and a long, long way to go if we had to come anywhere close to reducing this gap.
Exactly. Because, when I talk to some of my friends, and whenever I share this research with them, the one reaction which I always get is, but I am seeing so many more women in the workforce today. Well, yes, you are, because the population of women is growing. So obviously you're going to see more women working. But that doesn't mean that a greater proportion of women is working. So, just want to take some reactions from the team. So, some of our newer team members, Harnoor and Anushka and Anisha, any of you, if you want to, give some reactions to these statistics, because I think this is the first time you are also seeing them. Harnoor, if any of you can hear me.
Yeah, I was shocked most when
I think there's a lag.
Purva pointed out that in the 90s the number of women, the proportion of women was actually consistent. Can you hear me?
No, Anushka, there's a little bit of a lag in your voice. I think Anisha, you were going to say something.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity of seeing these statistics before while we were preparing some material,
Yeah.
and I had the exact same reaction that I think Anushka was trying to share as well, which is that, I mean, at first it's really hard to believe, and you've also heard that, oh, women are participating so much more, and you see so many women, but the point you made is so true and so important, because I think the importance of bridging the gap um, needs to be felt by everyone. So I
Exactly.
had the same feeling of shock, and sort of also just like a little bit of shame to see that there's such little progress that's being made in this sphere, and the struggle is quite real, and it's going to be quite a long way to go for us.
Exactly. So now that we've taken a bit of time. Yes, Ajay wants to say something. Ajay.
Hi guys, actually just been listening to this. Slightly off topic it could be, but I have a larger doubt in the sense that when we discuss this entire issue about gender wage gap and how we should try and get more women into employment, is the current scenario and factors of general job losses and the entire situation about how jobs are actually coming down, is that factored to an extent, or like how does this, like I just want to understand, like how does this data translate to, say for example, if say X amount of women coming into the workforce directly increases the industry potential or increases the employment, not just employment rate but also the, say, boost the GDP or boost the overall economic status. So how does that work alone in a time where the job cuts are happening more and more, and how we are seeing the shrinking of jobs as such? So just want to understand, okay, how do you guys go about
Yeah.
presenting the data in such a situation?
Right. So, Purva, if you could take us to the first slide about labor force participation, I think this is a very interesting point to discuss. So,
Actually, based on the first slide only, this question, yeah, I just remembered again. Thanks for, I think based on this slide is when I got that thinking. Thanks so much for.
yeah, so Ajay, the reason why we did this analysis with sort of this very long time span, we're literally looking at India from the beginning, in a sense, from independence to now, and we're noticing that this time series is showing us a declining trend for women to even come into the labor force. So what do we mean by labor force participation? As Purva sort of explained, it means that women should even participate and try to be part of the formal economy. Now, when you're so in this time period from 1955 to now, the Indian economy has also parallelly been through so many experiences, when in the beginning till probably 50s 60s we were looking at an agricultural focused economy. Then there was this whole push towards nationalization of the economy and saying that things should be owned much more by the government, the setting up of state owned enterprises. And then in the 90s when we started seeing liberalization, and then through post liberalization, now we are seeing an atmosphere of greater private sector growth, more and more push towards the private sector. And now today in 2020 we have a huge again a huge economic event in terms of COVID. So when we look at the last 50 years, the only thing which has remained constant is this fall in the female labor force participation. The economic scenario has gone on changing. You've gone from an economy which was agri focused to manufacturing to services to technology focused, but women have continued to leave the labor force and to not participate in work opportunities. So the reason why this trend is interesting is because it is persistent and absolutely against all economic growth and all economic logic. Because if you are trying to say build a manufacturing heavy economy, or if you are trying to build an economy which is more tech focused, you're obviously trying to attract the best talent regardless of gender.
Right.
So if you have a situation where there are job losses happening in the economy, they should affect both men and women equally. Or if you have a situation where you have a recessionary environment, say something which we may have been observed in, say, 1987, where we see a huge drop in the male labor force participation rate from 62 to 55. And we do see a slight increase in the female participation rate, maybe because of the fact that women, double income households were required during at the time of recession. Maybe because that was one of the hugest recessions that India had just before 1991. Before liberalization. So possibly there was some kind of a trend there, which is interesting. But aside from that, there is no other period in history where we have seen the female labor force participation rate increasing, and that also noticeably. So the question here is, what is it that is discouraging women from being in the economy and to work, rather than are we in a recession, or is it affecting the economy? We've been in a recession many times,
Right.
so this is much bigger in that sense.
Interesting. Thank you.
So with that, Vidhi has, I think, dropped off because her internet has been giving her some issues. So we can take one or two more comments. Ashruth, are you online? I think Ashruth has also dropped off because of some issues. Manvika, if you could contact Vidhi and just ask her if she can come back on so that we can start with her part. And till then, we can take a few more reactions from the team. So Janvi, I think you also worked on a lot of this data. So, what was your sort of, reading of the data, and how do you feel about the entire endeavor?
Yeah, so when I was reading the data or when I was doing it, I was mostly, I think I was inclined to think of reasons more socially, I think, because I also worked in the mental health bit that comes later, I think. So I worked in that. So I was trying to figure that out, or the social issues behind all of this. So, which is why right now when you were discussing this, I was just about to ask you, what do you think, based on these trends, do you think the labor force participation should change after this pandemic?
So we are actually, so Purva is also part of this. So Purva, Manvika, Khyati, and myself, and Vidhi and Ashruth, all six of us are now, delving very deep into this data on, the pandemic situation and how that's affecting women's labor force and participation and unemployment. So, we are delving into it. And the entire objective for us is to write maybe a paper, or at least prepare a presentation to say this is what is going on. There are a lot of sort of conflicting trends, because people are saying, oh yes, you're going to have more work from home now, which is good for women and good for women's participation. But I believe that work from home is just one part of the story. And what is actually happening in the wider economy, and the kind of job losses, and the fact that there is a sociological sort of condition where people feel that men have first right to a job as opposed to women, might actually shape the narrative much more deeply. So we're waiting to see the data, and every month we are tracking the data to see how the story actually plays out. So with that, Vidhi has come back, and we have about 5 minutes remaining in this call. So I'll ask my team to circulate the link for the next call, and Vidhi can start. So that we'll be shifting to a second, Zoom call after this one is over. So we have about 5 minutes remaining in this one. So if my team can just put in the link for the second call in the chat box. So Vidhi, you're muted. Thanks, Manvika. So everyone, the link for the next call is in your chat box. So in about 4 minutes, we'll be shifting to the next call. Vidhi, can you start?
Vidhi?
Mitali, sorry, Vidhi just called. I think she got disconnected again. She will just join from the second call
All right.
directly.
Yeah, then this is a good time for us to all switch to the second call. So everyone, please, take the link for the second call, and let's switch over to the second call. If there are any issues, just let us know, and we can text you the link in case you can't see it. Also, Samarpita, I just saw your comment, and let's take that up in the second call. Thank you for that.
Right. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So in the previous section, we looked at employment indicators to estimate the quantum of women's participation in the formal employment. And in this section, we will review the sectoral composition of to get an idea of the nature of women's work and different job roles in both urban and rural areas. Purva, next slide. Yeah. So over the last few decades, the Indian economy has witnessed a significant increase in the contribution of the service and industrial sector to the output and GDP. But we've also witnessed a falling contribution of agriculture towards the GDP. But however, this has not, hello?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, there was some disturbance. Okay. So, however, this has not translated into a structural transformation in the employment at a macroeconomic level, especially for women. So, what we observe is that when it comes to rural areas, there is an overwhelming majority, even today, almost 73% of women are employed in the agriculture sector, with only a small proportion employed in construction and manufacturing activities. And this trend in the rural areas where women are being employed in agriculture has been observed over the years, and this trend is still prevailing. Also, sectors like agriculture are marked with low productivity and wages, and they do not provide much scope of growth for women. Moving on to the urban areas. So over here, we see that women have moved away from agriculture to service and manufacturing sectors. In the service sector, where 61% of women are employed, we see a concentration of women in services such as education, health, and the handicrafts or handloom industry. Now, when we talk about these occupations, for example, health, women constitute majority of nurses, midwives, primary health workers such as ASHA and Anganwadi workers, but not as many doctors. So the male to female ratio for doctors in India stood at 5.1, while for nurses it stood at 0.2. Similarly, in teaching, women form the majority of teachers in primary education, but primary education level, but not so much at the higher education level. But there's a long-term trend observed in the teaching profession where a large number of women are being employed, because the profession requires, it provides more flexibility to women of low working hours. So this has emerged as a preferred occupation. Also, each of these occupations entail arduous and highly skilled labor-intensive tasks. Yet they don't allow women to progress and reach the higher ends of the production value chain. So these particular occupations have become feminized occupation where an overwhelming majority of women are being represented. Now moving on, we will examine the reasons for this distribution of occupation amongst women and the various constraints that they face. So apart from the various social constraints which Purva talked about earlier, there are various legal and economic constraints as well, especially in the manufacturing and the export-oriented sectors. For example, the laws governing, when women can work, in which shifts they can work, and in which industries they can work. So a research found that female participation in export-oriented jobs fell despite increased trade and reduced trade barriers during the 1990s, and this was likely due to the legal constraints on women's working hours because of the factory laws, which still continue to prevail even today. Now, so, and then increasing mechanization and automation is another factor which is responsible for this occupational segregation. So in agriculture, we see that the use of seed drillers, harvesters, and threshers has displaced female workers from these labor-intensive tasks which they were performing earlier. If we look at the textile sector, the use of machinery, for example, to replace hand looms with power looms has actually led to a situation where lesser and lesser number of women are being employed. Research over the years has shown that because of this occupational segregation, women have lost out and they have not been able to retrain themselves for these new job roles which are getting replaced. In service sector, with rising automation, a research by McKinsey projected that up to 12 million Indian women could lose their jobs by 2030 across different sectors. And less than 19% of new job opportunities in India's fastest growing occupations were taken up by women. So this shows us the occupational segregation and concentration of women in certain sectors like textile and agriculture in rural areas, and then teaching and nursing in urban areas, which has led to a slow growth of employment for women. Moving on, the most important finding, one of the most important findings our research told us was that the income effect shows why women are not valued at the workplace. So at the end of the day, there's a perception that women are not the primary income earners of their family. And as a result, whenever there is an improvement in the per capita income of the household, women will withdraw from the workplace. So this is an effect which is seen across the income categories, and especially in the middle income category, where there is a certain patriarchal norm that women have to prioritize household work over their outside work. Also, as Purva talked about, that women spend almost 577% more time doing housework than men. So there is certainly an opportunity cost being associated with them moving out of their house and working. There are also norms which surround their mobility because of unsafe public transport and unsafe public spaces. So it is difficult for women to access work and education opportunities which are further away from their house. And then families may actively discourage women from working outside the house because of public spaces being unsafe for them. And the decision to work for a woman it no longer remains a women's decision alone. Also, our research showed us that, can you go back to the previous slide? Yeah. So our research showed us that, as families' income improve, women tend to withdraw from the labor force, and this is considered as a signal of prosperity. And this trend is much more significant in the lower caste, which has been described as Sanskritization, wherein lower castes try to improve their social status by adopting social norms prevalent among the high caste, where higher income categories of family, they withdraw women from the workplace if there is an increase in the per capita income of the household. Then moving on, another interesting finding of our research is a U-shaped relationship between female labor force participation rate and economic growth. So a research based on cross-country data covering over 100 economies has shown that initially with growth and rising household incomes, there may be a fall in female labor force participation rate because more and more women are moving into education. But subsequently, with structural transformation from agriculture to industry, and falling fertility rates and rising education levels, more and more women start entering the workforce and particularly preferring service-oriented jobs. But India has been a major outlier to this trend, and the female labor force participation rate has remained below its economic peers, even after accounting the gains in the education, because over the years, India has seen a definite increase in the enrollment ratios, particularly in primary and secondary levels of education in both urban and rural areas. Now, after examining the workforce participation with education levels, we see that high levels of workforce participation were seen at the extreme categories among women with no education and women who have at least a graduate degree. So because the gains of high enrollment ratios in primary and secondary levels do not translate to the tertiary levels, women tend to opt for jobs more in the informal sector, which again are low paying in nature. And hence this occupational segregation plays a very important role in explaining the decline in women's labor force participation. Right. So in our analysis, we saw how women's participation in the economy has remained in labor-intensive, home-based sectors, which are plagued with low productivity and wages, and that this participation remains constrained with various social norms. And one of the foremost reasons for women's withdrawal from the workforce is the persistence of the notion that their primary responsibility is to undertake domestic duties, and a woman's choice to work is rarely her own. If nothing else, this data analysis points to the need for formal institutional support from the government so that women who remain out of the labor force but still want to work are no longer denied this opportunity. So in the second part of this webinar series, our fellow researchers Manvika Gupta and Ujjwala Singh will be discussing the 4 basic building blocks of the aspirations of a young woman. The first one being her health, her education, which equips her with the skills required to participate in the economy. Then her health, especially her nutritional status, which gives her the strength to work. Her family, which continues to exercise great influence on her decisions, and institutional support from the government, which influences her right to be safe, and have a peaceful existence in the country. So with this motivation, the next webinar to be held on 22nd August will create an inquiry of social and cultural norms that impacts a woman's life and hence the nature of her contribution to the economy. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation so patiently, and over to you, Midhali.
Thanks, Vidhi. Very well done. So, I just want to go into some of the areas and the 5 factors that we've, sort of uncovered to say that, what is it that actually drove these trends. And of course, it's been very interesting to listen to these 5 factors. And I think Samarpita had left us a comment in the previous, webinar. So Samarpita, maybe you could introduce yourself and maybe let's go back to that point which you were making earlier, if you can hear me. Samarpita? I think she can't hear me.
Hello?
Yeah, hi Samarpita. You had dropped us a comment in the previous, discussion, and we were keen to hear from you on how you felt, through this entire, presentation. And also, we just wanted you to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm a master's student at Gokhale Institute, and I've graduated from St. Stephen's in 2018. So I've been interested in your work, and Laboni Singh actually had referred me to this webinar.
Wonderful.
So, So like you said, it's very surprising, and also interesting to see the trends that we see in women's participation. So one of the things that I also noticed that the wage gap percentage is increasing with the increase in the average daily wages. And it's also more in the urban areas compared to as the rural areas, both in the category of casual or regular. So I think that is something very contrary to our general beliefs. We would think that maybe in the urban areas there is more awareness, there is less prejudice even against the stereotypical patriarchal norms that we have, but the trends speak of something else. So I think that was interesting.
Thank you so much for your observations. I think we have a few other people, from our former interns who are with us. Venkat, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, I can. Yeah,
Hi, Venkat. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, good. Nice to see you proverbially here. So, you've also sort of worked a lot on some of this data, and you probably, at the time when you were working, you may not have actually understood why we are going through all of this. So, how are you feeling like seeing the entire thing come together, and some of this research that we've uncovered now?
Yeah, because like when we were looking at it in portions, that itself was like quite shocking, because one of the things that I was going through a couple of days back, there was this India Spend article which talked about how in the past 15-20 years, 19.1 million women have dropped out of the labor force. And is very weird, because if 19.1 men had actually dropped out of the labor force, there would be rioting here. But we have never actually realized that 19 point, we have to look at data to realize that 9.1 million women have dropped out of the labor force. So it's like this data, it's actually quite sad that we need data to tell us this. We don't even realize that this is a thing, because unemployment is high. We can see it because even noticing without data.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And, I think we also have Kavya with us. Kavya, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, I can hear you.
Hi, Kavya. Could you maybe
Hi.
introduce yourself to the group, and would love to hear your thoughts?
Yeah, so hi, I came in really late. I'm a friend of Purva's and I work